Well, welcome everybody to the first episode of the DC Sports Report podcast. I'm your host, DC Sports Report, and for the inaugural episode of this podcast, we're going to be talking about the Nationals and Wizards. Let's just jump right into it. The first question: page, along with Redskins Central, Wizards page, Wizards Fever, and DC teams. So let's get right into it. The bullpen. The roster looked fine at the beginning of the year. We got some quality signings. We got Sean Kelly coming back from the last year off a great season. He was one of the mainstays of our bullpen, and yet this year he's got a 7.47 ERA, just like a lot of the other guys. Nats fan page, what exactly went wrong with this bullpen?
Well, hey, I'm Matt's fan page. I got the page about a couple years ago. Yeah, my opinion on the bullpen is the fact that I feel it's a role of confidence and not knowing when they're going to go in, because having the difference from pitching in the ninth inning to pitching in the eighth inning, seventh inning, etc., for whenever starting pitcher comes out is a big difference. So I feel like we're currently ranked the 29th ranked bullpen. So I feel like the ways we need to improve is, number one, you got prospects like Erick Fedde coming up. I feel like he's going to help. You got maybe Joe Ross turning into a reliever. He'll help. I feel like we just all need to set a standard role and just go with it. So I feel like we're giving up a little bit too much home runs. You got guys like Treinen with a 6.33 ERA, giving up he's giving up home runs, 3 home runs all year. I mean, but Sean Kelly's giving up a lot of home runs. I feel like we just need to set established roles and go with it and don't look back, so everyone can have their confidence. Yeah, I think that's mainly it. I think walking is an issue too. ERA is an issue. But I feel like after the trade deadline, after prospects come up, I feel like we'll get it set in stone. We'll be good. Yeah, so that's my take on that bullpen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Closer by committee never really works. It's very important to have guys that are setting their roles and know when they're going to come in. And it's always just smooths it out, gets the guys confidence. And as we know, confidence is very important when it comes to pitching in the 8th and 9th inning. Next topic, Ryan Zimmerman. He's having an offensive explosion this year, or Renaissance, as people are calling it. And he's leading the NL in home runs, leading the MLB in batting average. I mean, who saw this coming? Nobody. He's been awfully injured the past few years, and this year just comes back to his former form as the face of the team. Nats fan page, what do you think caused this explosion on the offensive side of the ball from Ryan Zimmerman?
I think it was the fact of being healthy, and because he's had back issues of late. I think it's a fact of having, of course, confidence again. I could see in his swing last year, wasn't as compact. His head wasn't staying locked in as much, and you could just see visibly he was shaken up because I could remember in the Orioles game when we had that comeback going and he lined out into a double play. I feel like you could just see his confidence just slowly regressing, and that continued into the playoffs, and that did not help us. But this year, I don't even know how to say it. I mean, his stats, not even halfway through the season, are already better in home runs and RBIs. Last year, in the whole season, he had 15 home runs and 46 RBIs. Already this year, he has 19 home runs and 52 RBIs. His batting average is .372. I mean, he's just better. He's confident. He's confident in himself. He's better swing. I heard he's talking with Daniel Hitzmurphy, one of the most best hitters in baseball, in my opinion. One of the best hitters in baseball and getting on base. So I feel like he's getting better as the day goes on. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all your points. I think talking with Murphy on him changing his swing, focusing more on those launch angles. If you were on my post on that about a week ago, Ryan Zimmerman focusing on launch angles, the new revolution as far as advanced stats goes in baseball. The higher the launch angle, the likelihood is higher that the ball will fall and you'll get a hit. He's been focusing a lot more on that, and I think that's definitely part of the reason he's had so much success this year. Yeah. Now, the next topic will be the Dusty Baker extension. The Nationals in the past have shown that they've been very hesitant to give their managers extensions or any kind of real money at all, that independent of their success, however successful the team may be. Great examples will be Jim Riggleman and Davey Johnson. Riggleman decided to resign in the middle of the season, if you remember, because he was so disappointed with the way the Nationals handled his contract situation. And Dusty Baker has been doing a great job. Clubhouse guy. The culture he's brought with him has been a big hit with the players. And He still hasn't gotten an extension yet. I think we all would agree that he definitely deserves to get one. He's done a great job. People may have not agreed with the hire at first because the other candidate was Bud Black, who is definitely a better baseball manager in the pure sense. He's done a great job with the Rockies team so far this year. But I think the clubhouse needed a lift as far as chemistry and morale goes. And Dusty Baker's definitely brought that. And I think the Lerners should give him an extension as soon as possible. I mean, it's great that he's here and we need to keep him here. Now, the next topic would be possible trade targets for the Nationals. We know the bullpen is in a flux, and we definitely need an extra outfielder, and there's some other areas of concern as far as the roster goes. So, DC teams, what possible trade targets are you looking at for the Nationals to go after?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. Been on Instagram for about 4 years now. Started around 2013. Didn't have a lot of followers back then, but it's grown ever since, and I'm about 1,700 right now. I think the main problem, obviously, has to be the bullpen. I think everybody knows that the bullpen has struggled a lot this season, and the main problem, like we talked about earlier, is not having a closer. At the start of the season, it was Blake Trinan, but I think after one or two starts or closing opportunities, he just kind of flamed out. Bullpen has kind of ballooned ever since then, somewhere around eight or nine right now. So I think the main possible trade targets would be a closer, of course, and then maybe an outfielder to replace Adam Eaton, because that's been a big hole, despite Michael Taylor playing pretty well in the outfield. I would say David Robertson would be a big target for the Nationals to go after from the White Sox. He's 32 years old, 10 of 11 on saves this year with a 3.09 ERA at the moment. And then there's also Alex Colomé from the Rays, who currently is actually arbitration eligible through 2020, so the Nationals could actually hold on to him for a while. Right now has only a 2 ERA, 18 saves on the season. And then as far as outfield, I think Lorenzo Cain from the Kansas City Royals would also be a pretty interesting choice for center field. He's a guy with a great glove in the outfield, has great speed on the base paths, 6 home runs on the year. So he's a guy with some sneaky pop as well. And so it would be interesting to see if the Nationals go after him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those targets. And as far as the Cain deal goes, I'd say that Mike Minor is also on the Royals. He's been a great setup man, starter turned to reliever, formerly with the Braves. He's been on fire so far this year. I think that the package deal potential is definitely there.
Yep.
But we know that Rizzo was very hesitant to give up any prospects for a bullpen guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Considering the situation this year, I think it's almost necessary. Now, heading into those trade targets, you mentioned Robertson. An article recently came out from Barry Slurga, one of the Washington Post reporters for the Nationals, and he said that the Nationals don't have David Robertson of the White Sox currently now because the Lerners decided to not go for the trade, to not approve that trade. The Lerners, of course, are the ownership family of the Washington Nationals. They have close ties with the GM Mike Rizzo. And the club's ownership apparently balks, Slurga says, when the trade was right in their hands to make for David Robertson. Greg Holland, the former Royals closer who dealt with some injuries and was out of baseball for a little bit before he signed with the Rockies this offseason, and now he's one of the best closers in baseball at Coors Field. And there's a deal in place with Greg Holland, Slurga reports, and the Lerner family wouldn't approve it. And you wonder how many times has this happened in the past where some money is prepared to be shelled out for some of these good players and the Lerners are just hesitating to give out any big money, just the same as they do with the managers. So how much better could this team be if guys like Holland and Robinson were signed? I don't know if they would have signed both because they're both in similar roles, of course, but one of the two, how much better would this bullpen be? How much better would this team's record be right now, as the bullpen has accounted for more than half of these losses? So I definitely recommend checking out that article. I'll put it in the description of the YouTube video, and it's definitely a good read as far as looking back and wondering how many times this ownership has declined a trade or declined a signing in free agency.
Yeah, I agree.
The division lead. We lost 4 in a row before the win last night against the Braves. Can the Mets catch up? Nats fan page, you want to answer this question about whether the division lead is stable going into the All-Star break or the stretch run of the season?
Yeah, I think it's pretty stable with the lineup being this potent. I think having this lead. I think it's 8.5 games, 8 games. I think it's stable because our lineup is keeping us alive, and I like the prospects that are coming up in the future. Eric Fetty just got called up to AAA Syracuse, which is hopeful because that's what the Nationals usually like to do. They like to bring up their prospects to AAA and then promote them straight to the big leagues. So with a trade possibly for the guys you named earlier, David Robertson and Alex Colomb, plus Eric Fetty and maybe Joe Ross, I don't really know. I feel like this lead could stay stable heading into the playoffs, and whatever happens, happens. Hopefully we make past the first round, but it's World Series or bust at this point because Harper's contract's coming up to an end. Zimmerman's aging. Worth is aging. I think the window's closing and the time is now to make a move. So I think it has to do with us making the right moves, not being afraid to pull the trigger and going with it and see how far this can take us into the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We're fortunate that the drafts in the past have picked up a lot of pitchers. We have some guys that have matured for a while in the minor leagues that are ready to come up to the big leagues to help this big league team out and get out of these bullpen struggles.
Yep.
So that's all the Nationals news that we are covering today in the first episode of the podcast. Let's move on to the Washington Wizards. Now in the midst of the offseason, after the finals just ended, now we're getting close to the time when the free agent frenzy begins. And the Wizards, while they are way over the cap, $25 million, in fact, due to some big contracts, Gortat, Mahimi, for example, that may or may not have really been worth it, some important decisions are coming up for Ernie Grunfeld, the GM, and the owner, Ted Leonsis, the most of which would be Otto Porter. He's due to get a max extension due to the new salary cap rules that maybe reward players that don't really deserve a max, but we'll get it anyway due to the market and what other players are getting. Skin Central, you want to answer this question about whether Otto Porter is worth the extension and whether the Wizards will give him an extension. Is there really any player that they could get that could replace him if they don't give him an extension?
Yep, love to answer that. And I think, honestly, I don't really know if he's worth it yet. I mean, he had one great year where all of his stats were up crazy. He's up to 13.4 points a game. Everybody knows about his shooting percentage, how much higher that got, 45%. Then field goal percentage got up as well. He's now shooting 51%. So those are all great as a fourth, fifth option on the starting lineup. But I don't really think that's worth the max yet for him. He's still a young player. Obviously, he's going to get better. However, I think the Wizards will end up giving it to him because they really like where they are. They're comfortable. They were very close to the Eastern Conference Finals. Unfortunately, we all know they came up a little short. But I think they just don't want to mess up what they have right now. I don't think they have the money to add anyone huge, even if he were to leave. So I think they'll just decide to keep him, and I think they'll give him the big money. He is a restricted free agent, so even if they don't get a deal done before he goes out, hopefully the Wizards can bring him back in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think he's definitely worth keeping, but the cost may outweigh the benefit, especially because Byron Bogdanovich, the other bench player they traded for during the season, if they sign both of them are restricted free agents, that would make them a tax team over the luxury tax. And as you know, over the luxury tax line is never a good thing. Now, apart from the team's own free agents, we have some wiggle room as far as signing some outside free agents. Now, Wizards page, you've had a lot of experience with this. You've been studying this free agency for the Wizards so far this offseason, as short as it's been. We have some options. What do you think that they are?
I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I'm Wizards Page. I've been on Instagram for about 2 years. And what I would look for if I were the Wizards general manager in free agency is, I think one good option would be Patty Mills as a backup point guard for John Wall. He provided really good three-point shooting for the Spurs this season that just finished, averaging around 40% from beyond the three-point line. And he averaged 9.5 points a game, and he would be a great option off the bench instead of Jennings if we were not to re-sign him. Another pickup that would be really nice would be Andre Iguodala. It would be unlikely that the Warriors would re-sign him because they're also tight on their cap situation. But Kevin Durant did say he would take a pay cut to keep some players, so we would have to wait and see what happens with that. Andre is averaging 7 points a game with 4 rebounds, and he would be a good option off the bench if we were not to sign Bogdanovich as well, with whether or not we sign him. And finally, I would love to see Ernie Grunfeld go for Rudy Gay, the Kings shooting guard. He's averaging 18.7 points a game, and he would be a really great bench player if we were to keep Porter. If we don't keep Porter, then we would need another scoring guard to help run our offense, and he might be the guy that could help us.
Yeah, I agree with all those. It's fortunate that we're not looking for starters at the moment. We have to shore up our bench. That's definitely favorable to having to fill a giant hole in the starting lineup. That's where the Wizards used to be. And now we've filled that up, and we're trying to fill out the bench, which was probably our biggest weakness in the playoffs. If we can get some of those guys, I feel like we can definitely make another run next year. Thank you all for listening. This has been a great first episode of the podcast. This is really only a taste of what's to come. We'll be having team-centric episodes focused on the Redskins, Wizards, and Nationals only. We'll be having episodes with the Capitals when the season gets started in hockey. So definitely keep tuning in to this podcast. It's only getting started. Listen to your favorite fan pages. Talk about the week's news. It's definitely going to be a lot of fun going forward. Thank you for listening to episode 1. We'll see you next time.